Hi everyone, Assalamualaikum and welcome back to my channel. Hi, if you are new, my name is Arina, and if you are coming back, I hope you all are doing well. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the new Fall Pens eyeshadow palette from Focallure. I have 3 shades with me. I'm also going to be comparing it with the 9 pens, which I also did a review. If you want to watch that, you can click up here. So if you're interested to know my thoughts and also how I create this eye look using one of the palette, just keep on watching. Okay, as per usual, before I go into the review, let's talk about the packaging. So it comes in this see-through window where you can see the shades, and also palette name is on the front, and there's no specific shade name for each of the eyeshadow, and the only palette that contains pressed glitter is the y.o.u eyeshadow palette, which is the more neutral tone eyeshadow palette, and the other 2 palettes are a mauvey pink eyeshadow palette, which is called ZQSG, and also lastly a warm tone eyeshadow palette, which is called YYDS. The palette itself feels rigid and also durable. It doesn't feel cheap, and also it has a weight to it. It doesn't feel like really lightweight or like kids makeup kind of packaging. It has a weight to it. Each of these palette retails for below RM9, at least from the shop that I bought all of this palette from. It also has a snap closure. It's secure and also travel friendly. Okay, I already primed my eyes using a concealer. Today I used the o.two.o concealer. Everything I use in today's link in the description box below. So today I am going to use the YYSY eyeshadow palette, which has a neutral tones with a pressed glitter in it. So firstly, I'm going to apply on my crease is the lightest shade from the palette, matte shade over here. Just run it across the crease area. Okay, the shade does show up on my medium skin, which is nice because some light shade like this just blends with my skin tone and doesn't show up at all. And now I already have the first light shade on the crease. I'm gonna take the deepest shade from the palette, this rich chocolatey shade, with a fluffy dense brush like this. This is just a NYX number 12 brush. I'm gonna pat that shade on the brush and then press it on the outer corner. The pigmentation is not bad. There's some kickback from the palette, but that is to be expected and inevitable. Okay, and using the previous brush with whatever left on the brush, I'm just going to blend this part here so that there's no harsh lines and the blend, so it blends fairly easily. And then on the inner part of my eyes, I'm going to fill it in with this metallic shade, and I did swatch it and it looks so intense from the swatch here. So let's put this on the eyes. Yeah, this metallic shade feels so smooth when I swatch it. This is what the metallic shade looks on my lid. I expect it to be more intense. I have high expectation for this shade because it swatched so beautifully and it feels kind of buttery and creamy. So I'm gonna swatch it at the back of my hand. As you can see, it's so reflective, but when I apply it with my finger, it doesn't deposit as much metallic or as much product on my lid. So I'm gonna pick the shade with a brush and we'll see if it applies better with a brush. I'm gonna pack it onto the lid. Yeah, I think it kind of applies better with the brush, but it's not that much of a difference with applying with a finger. I'm gonna take the glittery shade, the pressed glitter here, and with my finger, there's already glue in it, so you don't have to apply with the glue beforehand. So I'm just gonna take that and dab it onto the lid on top of the metallic shade. So there's the glitter. Okay, now I'm gonna finish this other eye, do some eyeliner and I'll be right back to finish up the lower lash line. Okay, for the bottom lash line, I'm gonna take the deepest shade, which is the rich brown shade here, and then stamping it on the outer parts, and then I'm gonna blend it out using the lightest transition shade, connecting this shade to the upper lid. And then I'm gonna blend it out using the lightest transition shade from the palette. With this eyeshadow, with the pressed glitter, you do have glitter fall out. That is inevitable. I don't mind that, and I don't really pay attention to the fallout unless it's super duper obvious. So I'm connecting this transition shade to the upper lid as well. And this is the finished eye makeup. If you want to watch the 9-pan eyeshadow palette from Focallure, you can click in my description box. So in my opinion, this 4-pan eyeshadow palette is a smaller version or a simpler version from the 9-pan eyeshadow palette, but as I look or as I analyze it even further, actually this is a complementary shades from the existing 9-pan palette, because there's no exact eyeshadow dupe from both sides. So for example, this is the XSWL from the 9-pan eyeshadow palette, and the 4-pan eyeshadow palette is ZQSG. I'm going to put them side by side so you can compare them. I'm also going to swatch the most similar shades from the palette. As you can see, there's no repeated shades, and also the pans from the 4-pan eyeshadow palettes are slightly bigger than the 9-pan eyeshadow palette. They have similar texture. The matte feels creamy when you swatch it. These eyeshadow palettes doesn't really have high pigmentation, meaning that when you pick it up, it doesn't deposit too much pigment on your lid. That can be a downside or an upside for you, depends on your preference. If you like to build up your eyeshadow, or if you don't like too much pigmentation on your eyeshadow, you might love this formula. There is actually 5 different finishes: matte, sequins, which is matte eyeshadow that contains glitter in it, metallic or shimmery shade, pressed glitter, which already have glue in it or built-in glue, you don't have to apply glitter glue beforehand, and lastly is marble, which is from the AWSL palette, this shade right here, which contains multi-glitter. And the glitter from the marble eyeshadow palette is actually very micro. It's not like a typical pressed glitter where you can see the size is bigger. The metallic shade from the ZQSG palette, which is the mauvey pink palette, feels dry, and also it doesn't deposit a lot of pigment on the lids even when I use my finger, whereas the metallic shade from the YYDS and also the YYSY eyeshadow palette, which is the neutral tone eyeshadow palette that contains pressed glitter, and also the warm tone eyeshadow palette on the first lane here, feels a lot more creamier. But when I tried to use it today, it is lackluster and it is not reflective as I want it to be, because from the swatch it looks very beautiful and creamy, and it looks very metallic, but when I apply it on the lid, it looks so lackluster and very disappointing, to be honest. And these eyeshadow palettes are more on the subtle side, especially the lighter tones such as the XSWL, the mauvey pink one, and also the AWSL, the neutral tone one. This eyeshadow palette, the mattes and also the metallic, are very subtle and more on the buildable, and you can achieve an everyday eye look with this. If you have a deeper skin tone, I don't know, I'm not sure whether this eyeshadow will show up on your skin, because the shade itself or the tones is very light even on my skin tone. From the 9-pans, I prefer the NSDD eyeshadow palette because it has a deeper tones in there. There's more depth in this palette, and also there's pressed glitter, which I really like. What I have on my lid right now is from the WWSY eyeshadow palette, which is the more neutral tone. This is my favorite eyeshadow palette palette from the tree, and I also did use the ZQSG in my Holika lip tint swatch. And as you can tell from the eye look that I have, the shades are very subtle. I did use everything here except for this one, and I cannot achieve the depth that I want from this eyeshadow palette. My favorite eyeshadow palette is the YYSY because it has a deeper shade in here. This is definitely a complementary palette for the AWSL, which is also the neutral tone eyeshadow palette, because I feel like this eyeshadow palette doesn't have enough depth, especially if you have a deeper skin tone than me. This will be a very lovely complementary palette for this, because from this 9-pan eyeshadow palette, even the deeper shade, it doesn't swatch that deep. Some of this eyeshadow doesn't swatch that great. For example, let me swatch this deep shade from the YYSY eyeshadow palette. That's that eyeshadow palette, and this is how it looks like on my lid. As you can tell, if I use my brush, it deposits and also picks up a lot more pigment, and it applies on the lid very beautifully. Don't judge this eyeshadow based off swatches only. Okay, now let me swatch the deeper shade from the YYDS eyeshadow palette, the warm tone 4-pan eyeshadow palette. As you can tell, the pigment is not as saturated, so you have to keep building it up, and even so, it doesn't look as deep as what it is from the pan. I feel like this eyeshadow is going for that Korean kind of vibe, because I tried Korean eyeshadow before, and pigmentation is not the same as Western eyeshadow palette, where the Western version is more pigmented and it's more saturated, and it deposits more pigment even when first you apply it, whereas for Korean eyeshadow palette, you have to keep building it up, and it's very subtle and kind of like a natural soft look. And now I'm going to swatch the metallic shade from the ZQSG, which is the pinky mauvey eyeshadow palette. And the metallic shade is more on the like glittery side, and it doesn't look as reflective as the other two palettes from the 4-pan eyeshadow palette. This is YYSY. I'm going to swatch it down here. So as you can see, there's pigment. And this is YYDS. Swatch it here. So yeah, it really depends on your preference. Just take my opinion with a grain of salt. Maybe this is your vibe, you like a subtle eyeshadow. For me, I love a very pigmented and bam, kind of like saturated with pigment eyeshadow palette. But thankfully, these eyeshadow palettes are easy to blend. I don't have any patchiness or like sticking onto one area or something like that. I didn't even set my eyelids, and this eyeshadow blends beautifully on top of it. I think the formula is consistent. Mostly, some of it feels a bit dry than the other. If you want to purchase this eyeshadow palette, I will link everything in the description box below. I will link the cheapest shop I can find, and also the exact shop where I bought all these palettes. Sometimes I bought the palettes from the official store, and sometimes I bought it from other stores where they offer a better price. So thank you so much for watching until the end. If you find this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I appreciate if you can subscribe, because I do a lot of makeup tutorial reviews, hauls and swatches. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I hope I see you guys in my next one. Bye. Assalamualaikum.